sessions happening around this topic. So yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm excited. So let me get this live stream set up on Facebook, and then we're kicking it off casually anyway, just casual conversation. Um, and yeah, we're really thrilled that you could tune in today and help us out with some of your wisdom and interesting information. I shared some information about you, and people are like, wow, it sounds like she's gone through a lot. So I'm just like, yes, this is a really stellar person. I'm excited about
Thank you.
you know, just your story. So, yeah, we're focusing on faith in the exam room. And I mean, you have been in the medical field for a very long time. And so I'm sure that you have spoken to a lot of people about their perspectives and about their experiences with doctors and with nurses. So, why faith in the exam room and what is that all about?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for opening up to this conversation because I think it's very important. As you said, I have 30 years in medicine and I've always been a believer. And, my walk with God certainly waxes and wanes like everybody. And one thing that's been solid the entire time is definitely giving me strength to get through my career in emergency medicine and now opening my own practice. Seeing what faith has done for patients over the years, whether it's if they're in crisis mode, whether it's a tough diagnosis, a loss of a family member, really witnessing firsthand how people's faith helped them cope and deal with a lot of difficult times. And now being out of corporate healthcare and stepping away from the constraints and having my own practice, I have the ability to make my faith-based functional medicine approach first and foremost. And my patients really appreciate this. It's not something that you walk through our doors and we're shoving it down your throat, but we certainly are open to the conversation. We are respectful to all walks of life, all levels of faith and cultures and beliefs. But, there's been many studies shown on how well people heal, decrease anxiety and depression by having faith as a priority in their life. So, I'm blessed to be in a space where we can discuss this more and really bring it into mainstream and not have it be so taboo in the doctor's office.
It is really interesting, right? And I really appreciate you unpacking that a little. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't have faith be part of your practice. And faith is such a important thing for a lot of people. Most of the world honors some type of tradition or religion, goes to church or goes to temple or mosque. And it just makes sense that that would be aligned with some type of lifestyle management or health program. So I think it's very fair. And it is interesting how Christianity is a bit more taboo versus like where we see yoga or we see the ties of Ayurveda with Hinduism, and we don't really question it because it's from this other land. So we kind of politically other these other types of religions to their therapeutics, but we don't see that lineage as one and the same here in the West. So that is an interesting kind of differentiation that I see personally, where it's like, well, of course, that person practices that religion. That's why he believes in those herbs or those therapeutics. Where oh, but over here, if you're a Christian and you have this, it's kind of what we don't see them as being in a space they belong together. So, do you see that too playing out? Because I've seen that several times, some examples of that.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, and I think you're definitely hitting on something. I think, Christianity as a whole is a very broad term. And I think, in a world we live at in today, there is a huge attack on religion in general. I do also see an effort to respect other cultures and backgrounds. And you're right, like I can, coming from living in the US and looking at other cultures, and I do appreciate people's practices and beliefs. So I believe here in our country, corporate healthcare is it's got lots of challenges, and it has become political, it has become monetized, and unfortunately, the things that medicine was once based on has been put up on a shelf and completely forgotten about. If you look back in the history of where medicine even started, caring for others and the beliefs of practicing medicine was a faith-based practice with God first and foremost. And I believe in today's world, people need that. We all are wanting love and peace and comfort, especially in those difficult times. So that is one piece of it. So I think these types of conversations are really good to bring more focus on looking at when I go to my medical provider and I want to talk about all of these things, and maybe I'm struggling. Why is it taboo that my doctor might want to have a prayer with me or tell me to rely on my faith or use that as a motivator to take care of our bodies? And that's another avenue or message I'm really trying to shed light on is honoring our bodies. And if we do that first and foremost, looking at it as a gift and something we need to steward, we're going to be healthier physically, mentally, and we can go do the work we're meant to do.
Yeah, and absolutely. And there's a lot of statistical evidence to all of what we're saying here. I mean, by the way, we're here with Sharon Lemoine today, and you'll have to check out her practice. She's sprinkled throughout my timeline this week, so find her links and make sure to follow her. Don't forget Sharon Lemoine; she's fantastic. And yeah, I mean, we're at this kind of really weird precipice where if someone says to you, "God bless," we look at them strangely, but then they
Yeah.
don't, have any strange resistance to talking about their politics with you and about
Right.
how they think you should feel in politics and how that might be why you're medically in a situation that you're in. It's like it's very interesting how we're kind of spacing away from our values and and the values don't always represent what we believe and why we don't think that should be part of our health. And then the statistical evidence is what I was talking about of it initially before introducing you again. It's like, yeah, I see lots of evidence around gratitude practices,
Yeah.
daily belief systems, affirmations, faith, prayer.
Yeah.
I don't think we can have healing without the spirituality component. And it's really truly interesting that that's the part that it's not emphasized as much when we're talking about the whole person.
And you're right on with statistical data and research backing up those ideas and theories. And you look at somebody just struggling to get out of bed in the morning, right? Or struggling just to be healthy. You know, are you going to fight what's right in front of you, or are you going to open with open arms? Let's just look at what is going to make this path the easiest. And really, living in a state of gratitude and being grateful, even with imperfections. And that's something I've talked about a lot lately is, we go back to honoring our bodies and our health. This is a God-given gift, and we can be so critical. In the world we live in, we can be so critical of ourselves. And when we take a step back and are grateful for what we have right here, right now, what God's given us to work with, it certainly is so much easier than fighting the society and the ideas that how are we supposed to look and feel and talk and think, right? Um, yeah, I'd much rather take that easier path and have a little bit of faith and strength to take on all the craziness we need to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, faith plays out, so much in situations where things might be really not working out and you don't know who to trust. But if you have faith, you're going to
Yeah.
be able to get yourself through it because it's not just your plan, it's the overarching plan that if you believe in God, God's created, but the universe is presented to you. And and it's interesting that there's a lot of darkness out there. I mean, if people look at you and hear your story, they're probably part of it's like, wow, she's got they were saying, wow, she's gone through a lot. I mean, you have type 1 diabetes,
Yeah.
you a cancer survivor, and yet you still have light that you share with other people. Can we talk about that? Because I mean, there's that's kind of one of the points of my show is to talk about why people would choose to give back to others even after going through all of these things themselves. Some people, it's like naturally like, this is what I should be doing because I've learned I want to share, but I think there's something else to it. So, do you want to share a little bit about your healing story?
Yeah, I would love to. I'm pretty much an open book. I have lived my life from a very young age, being very health aware, even in high school. I played sports and I was always working out and trying to eat right and do all the right things. And, got married, had a family. And at the age of 31, I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. And, the emotions that go behind a diagnosis of any sort, my first reaction was anger because I thought, wait a minute, I have worked so hard to take care of myself and I don't deserve this. This is a lifelong diagnosis. And I've told the story at the same time I was diagnosed. There was a very well respected nurse I worked with along the bedside in the emergency room. And about that same time, she was diagnosed with leukemia. And as I was dealing with the first few months of trying to regulate blood sugars and insulin doses and exercise and eating, she was on chemo. And 6 months later, she passed away. And that was a big wake up call for me and a reminder that, I was given a diagnosis that I can control. And that really resonated with me of how much control I truly have over my health, which is a conversation I have with my patients and my audience to really empower them to understand that control we have. Um, but I went on. I would continue to live a very healthy lifestyle, managed my diabetes, and then later on was diagnosed with Graves' disease, thyroid cancer. I went through surgical, menopause, and so that's allowed me to relate to my patients because we specialize in hormone therapy. We deal with a lot of mid-aged women. And so when they're sitting in the chair across from me and they're tearful and they feel defeated and they feel like they're going crazy and their anxiety and all of the things, I think they can appreciate the fact when I tell them, look, I've been through it. I hear you and we're in this together, right? I can hold your hand every step of the way and I think that is well received. Looking back, I think a big aha moment for me is I live in the longevity wellness and health space, and I'm constantly telling my patients, okay, eat right and do your exercising and weight bearing exercises and get your protein and take your supplements, and that's a lot. And I had to step back and think, what is motivating us to get up out of bed every single day and make that a priority? Because it's quite overwhelming. And I took a step back personally and realized, number one, I want my motivation to come back stewarding my body. And then looking back on my health past and my experiences, I look at my diagnoses as a gift because it has made me stronger. It has made me more faithful. It has made me relatable to my patients. It's made me a better practitioner because I've had to dive in much deeper on a medical level to understand things more than maybe a surface level, just treating patients day in and day out. So, how could I not be grateful for this diagnosis that originally I was so angry about? So that's where I choose to put my energy in and hope to pass it forward and motivate patients that, look at this as a gift.
That's a beautiful reframe. And I was like tuning in to listening to some Grant Cardone yesterday, and he was
Yeah.
like, when my father left us, that was a gift. When this something happened, it was a gift. And what we usually would anchor down as, wow, that was a terrible experience.
Mhm.
He was like, no, this was like a total gift. It gave me all this ammunition to go and change things. Being in a small town in Louisiana, I didn't want to be a fisherman. I didn't want to work in a refinery. And I mean, that kind of grit and tenacity that you also just talked about, it's like that in itself is a huge, huge piece of this entire conversation. So I really appreciate you sharing that message today. If we could shift just one more time here, because we have people who are tuning in and they're also conventional practitioners. They're
Yeah.
inside of hospitals, they're inside of the system, and they are very upset with what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. And they believe that there are more holistic strategies, being a
Yeah.
nurse or being a doctor.
Yeah.
What would you tell them as some type of practical advice to help support folks differently and or to keep the faith?
This is another topic that I'm very passionate about as a provider. I worked in emergency medicine for about 25 years, and there were many opportunities I had to discuss faith and God and even pray with a patient. And sometimes I did hesitate because I was worried about my job. I was looking over my shoulder because this was not widely accepted. And we all have to work. We all have bills to pay and careers to build. And so I hate to see that happening. And I am an advocate, number one, for providers really stepping out of that corporate model and opening their own doors and working in your scope of practice and not being bogged down with these ideologies of religion should not be part of medical care. That could be a whole nother podcast. But in the meantime, I would say, stand strong in your faith. Um, welcome those conversations. Trust that, you know, I think standing out in our faith, we have to really have the guidance to trust the process. And I know that if I'm going to take the time to pray with someone, I'm going to trust that, God's going to look out for me and I'm not going to lose my job. But if so, then there's a better plan for me. Easier said than done, I realize. But I think we all need to stand together and really bring the discussions more to the forefront and push the need of healing and faith in medicine at the bedside, in the clinics, and not shy away from it. Of course, be respectful. We're not shoving down anything down people's throats. But let me tell you, the patients want this. And it should be about what the patient's needs are that's driving our medical practice and not about making a buck. And that's where having conversations like this, I think, is the beginning to really advocate for patients asking for it and providers standing up and just doing it.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I mean, because I'm a millennial, so I grew up at a time where there was still Christian-based hospitals or, St.
Yeah.
Mary's, and things, these types of institutions have slowly kind of become more corporate or have changed into under corporate umbrellas. And you've seen kind of the loss of some of that more that kindness really and the care, and so I could see where all of these frustrations are going with these larger corporate models. And it's interesting because they are bigger businesses, but they've lost that human touch and that human connection, which is
Mhm.
why entrepreneurship's so appealing because I mean, fundamentally, we should be listening to the people who are receiving our products and are under our care and are transforming during our products, right? They should be transforming, right? They should
Right.
be getting results and we should be helping those results come to fruition. So it's interesting how there's kind of this balance now where the larger businesses out there, but then people are moving out in exodus to create their own things.
Well, and if you think about everything is so automated and with the advancing technology, I mean, this is just a snowball effect, right? We are losing human touch and human interaction. And I think this is going to be a very intentional thing we need to seek out because everything is so automated. And how do you have a heartfelt, faith-based conversation with automated chatbot? You know what I'm saying? I think that's the future, and I think we really need to be very aware of where we draw that line.
Yeah, and I think that there are a lot of organizations that exist. I know there's a couple that I've utilized recently, like Christian healthcare, different networks and things like that. So I'm sure that if people are feeling kind of like alone in this or not sure where to begin, well, you can reach out to Sharon Lemoine, and see what her resources are, see what she's been tapping into. Reach out to me, and I do have a couple, in case you want to get more connected or see if there are some people who might be looking out for your faith and thinking about faith as part of the healing journey. I mean, I know that the role of spiritual development, and it's not just about the concreteness of religion. It's about the virtues and values of like joy, awe, curiosity, being outside and feeling a sense of reverence. These
Yeah.
types of things and qualities are what I tap into with my program. But it's like, I'm a clinical herbalist, but it's like, we don't quite like frame them as like healing mechanisms, where I think that you probably have some clinical examples of that, some miracles even that you
Yeah. Oh,
probably have
yeah.
attested. Do you want to share one that, if you have one that comes to mind, or
Oh my
a clinical?
goodness.
Yeah.
You know, oh gosh, that's a great question. I could think of many stories that patients have come back with very unexpected results, whether it's being healed with cancer, with a very difficult diagnosis, very poor prognosis, and they go back for repeat scans, right? And the cancer is gone. We've heard stories like that many times. I have
Right.
seen personally many patients pass away in emergency medicine. And the one thing I talk about is I've seen hundreds of patients pass. And to me, if you're really paying attention, you can see the look on their face. And there's a sign of peace. There's a restful appearance to those patients when they pass. There's a process when they're passing where you hear many, many stories, but they might kind of be maybe a little confused, speaking words, reaching up. I mean, man, I think those are the angels coming down for those patients, right? I've seen it. I've also seen patients with a very fearful look on their face when they have passed, angry. Um, it's kind of hard not to notice these things. And so that's one thing that's always stayed with me. And I just have always thought, how do you work in medicine or even just in general get through life without some sort of faith? And how can you ignore those obvious signs in medicine alone, right? As a practitioner, I mean, unless you're really just blind to everything, it's right in front of you. So, we've talked to patients with near-death experiences. One of the patient or not patients, one of the people I follow on social media is Gabe Perot, young kid that had a head injury, and he wrote a book, 18 Days in Heaven. And that was a classic example of he was pretty much brain dead with a severe brain injury. And his account of his experience is just phenomenal. And obviously sent back to do some work, but that was a miracle in itself. And we hear these stories all the time. And as you mentioned before, there are probably people out there listening and very off put by our conversation. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody has
That
an opinion.
darkness.
Yeah,
It's the darkness. The darkness always comes in and tries to take away our belief. And so
yeah,
that's why faith is the answer, because faith keeps us on the path of believing, right? Like,
yeah,
we can see all these examples, but we have to keep aligned with it and practice it. So I
yeah.
love this show. I love this web show because I bring on practitioners like you who are just full of data. Like, and sometimes it just gets invoked and inspired within the conversation to remind us of all that data, all that living data from all the years of service. Sharon Lemoine, thank you so much. And you guys, this is Sharon Lemoine, and she is the owner of Gig Harbor Concierge Medicine. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, I really enjoy connecting with providers like yourself, having the conversation. I've got my YouTube channel, Health, Hormones, and Faith, and I just welcome any opportunity to have these types of conversations with patients, with practitioners, with podcasters, because I think we're really doing a lot of good work that patients and people really are craving.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that. I think we met initially, I think it was an AI service that got us in
Yeah,
touch on emails.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's kind of cool that these things are working to our benefit. I'm not quite sure how I got in the AI service, but I think I spoke it out loud. So that's probably how. So that's an interesting story all in itself. I just spoke out loud. Oh my gosh, I got to book some guests. And then my inbox is flooded. And I was looking at them like, wow, Sharon, she seems amazing. So I reached.
Isn't that crazy? And I was just having this conversation last night talking about there are so many automated services and they can be very beneficial. as long as it brings us back to these organic conversation, because today everything is so scripted, everything is so automated that okay, anybody can read off a teleprompter, right? But I really, really enjoy, and I think people really want that human touch and the human conversation. And so if we're using technology to get to this point, well, I think we're getting the benefit
Yeah,
of it all.
sure. We're on the right track, right, to inform how we want that experience to be for us. Well,
Great.
thank you so much, Sharon. I hope to have you on the show again soon and I hope that you'll stay in connection with us and as we grow together. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And also, Sharon, I'll be sharing like clips of our video and interview throughout the weeks, throughout the month of August. So look out for those. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.